Well, hello, and welcome. I am Jamila McMallow, and I am a life and relationship strategist. And I know that you're here because you are that strong, driven, high achieving woman business owner, coach, executive entrepreneur. You're really killing it in your business. I mean, you're thriving, you're successful, right? You know what it's like to go out there and do the thing. However, you're also married. And although you love your husband and you know he's a good man, right now, where you're having your biggest struggle is feeling like the independence, that strong, independent woman you were before you met your husband, and quite frankly, still are. You feel like there is some conflict there or some incongruence with that and you trying to be a good wife. And so you're feeling like a lot of anxiety or feeling like a fish out of water, or maybe even wondering if you made a mistake or feeling like maybe you don't know how to be married. So if any or all of that is true about you, you are in the right place. You are really going to enjoy this training that I've put together for you today. And what we're talking about really is your independence as a woman versus your being married or working together with your husband as a couple, being a part of a team, right? And what's interesting about this discussion is that it's really going to center around your definition of independence and really how I'm defining that for you. What's behind the independence, as it were, because that's really the root and the crux of the matter, right? Because when you think about your business and the success that you've had, you can honestly say that you haven't done it alone, right? You know that as a successful business owner, you've done what's called collaborate, bounce ideas off of others, come together and have a mastermind to come up with new ways of doing things, or to have people help you to see your blind spots or to point out things that you're missing. So you understand the beauty and the benefit of having others with you on your journey. So what if your husband was just that person to collaborate with in life on your journey, instead of someone that you feel like is holding you back from what it is that you feel that you want? Just kind of keep that in mind, okay, as we go through this training. So first of all, I want to share with you some thoughts and expressions from some of my current and previous clients. Especially, I'd like to draw your attention to these comments over here on the right. I personally don't celebrate Thanksgiving, however, my client does. And what was lovely about this message that she sent me was she talked about how her husband said that when he sat around the table this year for Thanksgiving, he was going to be thankful for me. And what that is really saying is that the work that I was able to do with my client and helping her, work through the emotional challenges and things that she brought into the relationship, things that predated him. By helping her work through those things, the way that she now was showing up in the relationship, the way that she now was showing up as who she was being for herself, even for her business, he could see that and was affected by it. And so I share that to say that in working on these challenges and things that we're going to talk about in this training, it doesn't just impact you personally, it impacts your marriage, it overflows into your extended family, and it overflows even more abundantly in your business. So while we heal these origin things together, if at the end you decide, hey, I want to work together, as we heal those things, it doesn't just heal that one problem. It doesn't just heal the challenges that you're having in your marriage. It overflows into everything else, okay? One of the things you're going to learn about me is that I don't deal in symptoms. I solve problems, and we go all the way to the root and the bottom, and that's how we solve the problem, okay? So let's get into our discussion. So first of all, we're going to be talking about, like I said, what's behind it, right? So why are you so independent? How has this independence helped you, and how has it hurt you? And then how can you really learn how to embrace your marriage without fear? And when I say fear, I mean this fear that you have somehow that you're losing yourself, that the woman that you know yourself to be, just strong, driven, independent, that somehow she's becoming diminished, okay? So we're gonna talk about how that doesn't have to be the case or the situation, okay? So first of all, why you are so independent, how it happened. Let's go back to the beginning. So when you were a little girl in childhood and you cried or expressed your feelings or emotions, you got negative feedback, okay? Could have been spanking or yelling, could have been that you were told to be quiet. Uh, these types of behaviors basically told you as a child, you internalize it, that emotions are bad, or when I express my feelings, it invokes a negative response, okay? So of course, children don't like negative feedback. None of us do. And so what did you do? Well, you stopped expressing your feelings. But more importantly, you started to develop a disconnection from your feelings and your emotions. You started to stand alone. You started to feel as though, okay, I can't share my true feelings with anyone. And so you began to stand alone within yourself, and within yourself, even disconnecting from who you really were, how you really felt, because you felt like somehow those things were bad, negative, really being judgmental towards yourself when it came to your emotions. Another way this independence that you have was developed or could have been developed is perhaps it was modeled for you by your mother or another primary caregiver. Did you grow up with the idea of what it means to be a strong woman, right? Or a good woman? It's that you are constantly going and doing and being for everybody else. You're never complaining. You're putting your needs last. You're not, saying anything about yourself. It's just always everybody else. You show up for everybody else. And that's just what you do. You hold it down for everybody else. And you're just that trailblazer. You're at the front of the line. You're leading the pack. If that's what was modeled for you by your mother, well, she was your day in and day out example of what it means to be a woman. And so, of course, you would naturally embrace that way of being and just assume that to be a woman means I have to be this way. And by the way, if there was that little comma to it where it was, I could do anything without a man, or I don't need no man, then there's also some negative energy there around what it means to have a man in your life, to have him as someone you can lean on or whatever. There's some negativity there. It almost comes up as like it's a weakness, okay? Another way that you may have developed some independence and really, again, this disconnection from your emotions, disconnection from yourself, is trauma. It could have been a coping mechanism. If you had something ongoing that was especially painful, you just learned how to shove your emotions down, disconnect from them, and stop feeling just to be able to cope. And so the way that this drives your independence is that, we're going to get into it a little later, is it allowed you to become the woman that you are today, to be the success that you are, because you're able to just go forth no matter the challenge. However, when it comes time for your relationships, your marriage, it's all about emotions. And so if you've got all this stuff going on inside of you when it comes to being emotional, this is going to be a challenge and an issue. Okay, so this is how you develop this independent way of being, this stoic kind of way of being, of just blazing through life and making it happen, right? And it has worked for you in some ways, but in some ways it hasn't. And like I said, we're going to talk about that. My question really for you is can you relate to any of these? Maybe one of them applies to you, maybe all of them, apply to you. I will tell you too, that you definitely want to make sure that you have a paper and pen, because I am going to be asking you to really take some time to reflect. Okay, I'm going to be asking you some questions and encourage you to pause and journal a little bit, write the answers down, really think about what it is that we're talking about and these questions that I really want you to ponder as you consider your own situation, okay? Here's your first question. When you think about what we just discussed and how that independence happened, how it developed, and again, I'm going to use these interchangeably, how this independence, this disconnection from your emotions or who you are emotionally, I want you to think about, how do you feel this disconnection, this independence. How do you think this is affecting your marriage? Okay. So I want you to just go ahead and pause and think about that for a minute. And if it makes sense, just jot it down. Okay. So I'm going to hope that you paused, okay, to consider that, and we're going to go ahead and move on. So how it affects your relationship with your husband, right? You just took a moment and you thought about how it affects your relationship, but now we're going to break it down. We're going to get into it even deeper, okay? But first of all, the way that this is showing up in your marriage, it can be several ways, or it could be all of these ways. But the first one we're going to talk about is you repress and pretend. So what I mean is, you don't tell your husband how you really feel. You repress how you really feel, and you pretend that everything is okay until you finally reach your limit, and then you explode, putting your relationship in peril. And it's kind of like, you fight to the death, right? Because you're so fed up with all these things, but it tends to catch him off guard because he had no idea any of this was going on. So because you're disconnected from your emotions, because you're so used to being alone within yourself, and you're like, why are you over here almost towards him, right? Trying to be all up in my space, okay? So you don't tell him how you feel, and you pretend. And a large part of this is simply that you don't know how, okay? You just don't know how to share these things. You just push them down and tell yourself, nope, 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 until you can't do it anymore. You can't pretend. You also may find that you're walking on eggshells in your marriage. Maybe you feel really anxious or insecure because, like I mentioned, you may have some underlying things floating around in your mind, some beliefs that you picked up as a little girl about men that are negative. And so you may feel a discomfort being in such a close, intimate relationship where you're unable to anticipate his feelings or his thoughts, or you just kind of feel uncomfortable. And so the insecurity is not that you feel like he's going to leave you, but it's just this insecurity in that you feel like a fish out of water. Like, I don't know how to do this. Okay. I don't know how to do this. All this emotional stuff, and him, like I said, being all up in mind, you just feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells. Okay. Or perhaps you have the great wall of your heart, meaning, again, you never say what you really feel. And you, in fact, view vulnerability as a weakness. And here's the thing. You have a wall around your heart because of the things that we discussed that happened in childhood, okay? So it started there, where you learned that your emotions invoked a negative response. And so in order for you not to continue to be hurt further, you began to guard your feelings by not sharing them with anybody, by not letting anybody get too close to you to where they could really cause you harm. And now going out into the world with that emotional disconnection, you no doubt attracted men that kind of played into that, because prior to meeting your husband, who happens to be a good man, who's trying his best to love you, prior to meeting him, you no doubt have had to kiss a few frogs. In fact, your husband probably does not really fit in to your usual type or to the usual relationships that you've been in your past. You may have dealt with a lot of toxicity, okay? And so what those relationships did was make the wall around your heart even, you added 10 layers of bricks. I mean, there's no way that wall is coming down. You really are like, nope, 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 nope. And so somehow, your husband broke down enough for you to say yes and marry him, but you're having trouble connecting with him, and he can feel that, okay? He can feel that. And so again, it's this negative connotation around your feelings, around being vulnerable, that somehow that means that you're weak, and that means that you can be hurt or taken advantage of, okay? So this is the impact that what's behind the independence, how this is affecting your relationship with your husband, okay? It's not the independence of, you making choices and decisions for yourself. It's the independence of you standing alone within yourself emotionally and refusing to allow anyone into your space to connect with you on a deep, intimate level. Because intimacy is not a physical thing. It is an emotional connection on a deep level, really, truly being able to bare your soul to someone and know that they are going to receive it without judgment. And know your husband's not perfect, and he's not going to get it right every time. But when you're dealing with these things, when you're repressing your feelings, when you're walking around on eggshells, when you have a wall around your heart, can you imagine what that must feel like? Okay. And you love him and you're a good person and you have no intentions of hurting him. But this is how this independence, this disconnection from your emotions is affecting your relationship with your husband. So now I want to dig into how this independence, again, or this disconnection from your emotions has actually helped you, right? And then conversely, how it has hurt you for the good. Like we've already determined, okay? You are focused and driven and determined. There is no goal that you have not set for yourself that you haven't reached, despite challenges and obstacles. In fact, when someone lays down a challenge or an obstacle, you're like, no problem. Giddy up. You're right over it. You just keep going. In fact, it's almost all the more reason for you to push through just to prove that you're unstoppable, right? So that's the good part. You're independent in that you make a decision and a choice and boom, you go for it. You are not connected to your emotions. You know how to get the job done and get it done on time, reach the goal, hit the mark, et cetera, et cetera. It's the reason why, like I said, you are so successful in your business. It's the reason why your clients know they can count on you. It's the reason why your clients are getting phenomenal results working with you. It's because of who you are and that strength that you show up as that rock for them, okay? So that's the good. No doubt when you were going through school, you were academically successful for all the same reasons. You were disciplined, focused, able to concentrate and check off boxes, and get the good grades. Again, you were professionally successful. Let's say you have a job, not necessarily a business. Either way, you're succeeding because it's just who you are. It's how you do you. It's how you do life, okay? You're also an excellent friend because you're dependable. Bring these qualities to the table and man, you attract people that are like, oh my goodness, she's amazing because you're the rock. You're the one that they all lean on. And this could also include your family. Perhaps you're the one that everybody goes to for advice or the one that they lean on when they need that support, okay? So that's the good part about your independence. It has allowed you to do all these things. It has allowed you to be the woman that you are. It, in fact, is a part of the reason why your husband was attracted to you because of your energy, because of your enthusiasm, because of your drive. It's infectious. It feels good to be around someone who has a sense of direction about their life, who's going and doing and being, right? That was attractive to him, this part of you. So this is the good. Now the not so good, okay? You may actually, if you're brutally honest with yourself, find that you actually are very lonely. Even though you're married to a good man, even though you have a lot of wonderful female friends in your life that you connect with that are, going and doing and being just like you, you're surrounded by them, but you still feel very lonely. Because the truth is, you're not really putting all of yourself into these relationships because you don't know how. You don't know how to rely upon anyone else. You don't know how to really connect intimately with others. You don't want to feel like you're being a burden or like if someone does something for you, you feel like you have to do something for them in return. So you're not that great at receiving. And so because of that, you feel like you actually don't really have anyone to whom you can really pour out those deep things that are in your heart, those vulnerable fears that you have, those ways that you feel weak, okay? You don't feel like there's anyone that you can really just tell all that to. You're afraid to because you feel like they'll judge you or they'll lose respect for you. And so not being able to truly be you, who you are and all your goodness and all your flaws with anybody, it's very lonely, okay? Not so good as you probably also feel misunderstood to some extent, often misjudged, like, oh, you're too much, or you're too loud, or you're too this, or you're too that, because you are, have that independent way about you, because you are disconnected from your emotions, you're able to just kind of tell it like it is, say things as they are without all the stuff attached to it, because you've detached from it. So you can just kind of be a little more clear and cut and dry. Well, some folks aren't ready for that. And so they'll try to say things about you that you talk too much, you think you know it all, or like I said, or you're just too loud, whatever, you're just too much, or who do you think you are? All those things. So you may feel misunderstood or misjudged, okay? And like your independence is frowned upon, right? Not so good as you also probably don't have a whole lot of self-compassion. Because remember, we talked about, to you, emotions are negative. They're weaknesses. They're like, oh. And so what I mean by no self-compassion is that you don't embrace or acknowledge or allow your emotions to just be. You judge them. You talk harshly to yourself. You are so that driven and determination, that's how you drive yourself. Like if other people could hear the way that you talk to yourself, they would be shocked, absolutely shocked at the expectations and the standards and the way you don't cut yourself a break. You don't give yourself any slack. It is like, no, not today, you're not. Okay. So there's no self-compassion. So, you are not kind and loving to your own feelings and emotions. Other people pick up on that energy. And so they will get the sense then that you don't need to be comforted, that you don't need a soft place to fall, that you are strong, that you've got it. Okay. So you got to show that love and compassion to yourself first. Another thing that's not so good about this way of being is you have no idea who you are, what you really desire, let alone how to have it. And by that, I mean, because you've been going through life, checking off boxes, accomplishing goals, living up to expectations, following what other people kind of expect of you or think you ought to be doing. And now you've reached this point in your life where you're like, well, who am I? What do I actually like? What do I actually desire my business to look like, even though it's successful? Or what is it that I want my marriage to look like? I've got this great man loving me, and I don't know what to do with him or to do with this. And I don't even know how to define this relationship or what I even want for it. Okay. Let alone believing that you're allowed to have what you desire. Giving yourself permission to have the marriage that makes sense to you and that brings you a great deal of joy instead of all this anxiety and discomfort. Having a business that speaks more into your true gifts and things perhaps that you haven't even uncovered yet, rather than what you've learned from the latest guru coach you hire. Okay. The not so also that you don't know how to express your feelings in a healthy way. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but if you're disconnected from your emotions, if you're judging them as something negative, then no, you're not going to know how to sit down with your husband and talk to him about a challenge or an issue in a way that doesn't deteriorate maybe into an argument, or maybe you even arguing or bringing up something that has nothing to do with the actual issue, just some symptom, because you don't know how to communicate the actual problem. You don't know how to say, well, really, I just want to be hugged and held at the end of the day and my back rubbed, because that would make you, in your view, appear weak or vulnerable. But when that's actually the truth. So instead, I'm going to argue about, the fact that when I come home, the dishes are still dirty and you were here first, or whatever, all this other stuff that doesn't matter, when the real issue is you just want to be loved. Okay. You just wanted some attention, but you don't know how to ask for it. You don't know how to say what you need. And that frustrates you and scares you at the same time. Okay. I want you to, again, take out your pen and paper And I want you to pause after I am done talking, because I want you to consider these questions for self-reflection. So the first one is, when my feelings are hurt, my first reaction is to, and I want you to finish that phrase. And I want you to just write whatever comes to you. Then secondly, do I feel completely comfortable sharing vulnerably from the heart with my husband? Why or why not? And here's the kicker. Why do I hate for people to see me cry? Not only just your husband. You don't like anybody to see you cry or break down. And we're not talking about you're watching a sad movie or something on TV. We're talking about you crying about your own emotional pain or your own frustration or your own trauma. Why do you hate for people to see you cry? Because you're hurt. Okay, so I want you to pause here and take a moment and really reflect on these questions and take the time to answer them. Okay, so now that you've done those questions for self-reflection, I want you to think about this. When you think about what we've talked about so far, and when you think about the answers that you just came up with, these questions like, why is it hard for you to cry? Why can't I connect with my husband? All these things. I want you to think about, what is this costing you in time, happiness, and energy? Okay, because being the way that you are, driven, high achieving, it is very easy for you to view the tangibility of your business, the tangibility of money, the equating of value, etc., in that framework, in a business professional setting. You have no problem understanding that. But when it comes to your emotional state, your relationship with your husband, your relationship with yourself, your happiness, if, by the way, you even believe you're allowed to be happy. Because I would dare say, or throw the question at you, have you ever actually been happy? Do you actually know what that feels like coming from the inside out? Because when it comes to your time, how many years have you had these struggles that we've talked about? How many relationships were you in prior to your husband where you were suffering? And now you've got the good man, but you're still suffering, just in a different way. I mean, he's not causing you any harm, but now you still you still aren't happy. So what is that? Okay. So your time, your happiness, and your energy, because it takes energy to circulate in negative thoughts. It takes energy to push down your emotions. It takes energy to show up in relationships that you feel like are draining you because you don't know how to function in it in a way that's healthy and feels good to you, even though you know the other person isn't doing anything to you. You know it's you, okay? What is that costing you? I want you to put a dollar amount on it. Because you have to think about this. You have to understand that when you are coming from this place, when you have unresolved hurt, pain, and trauma from your childhood that is translating into how you're showing up in your relationships, listen, it's showing up in your business too. There are blocks, blind spots, things that you cannot see, opportunities that you're not taking advantage of because of this stuff, this gunk that's going on inside of you. The way it's showing up, the symptom is, okay, I'm having these challenges with my husband, okay? And thank goodness you married him, and now you have the opportunity to see it so you can deal with it. And when you deal with it, it's gonna overflow into all these other areas of your life, like I mentioned earlier. So what is it costing you? This challenge in your marriage, these issues you're having with your husband, this struggle of feeling conflicted at trying to be this independent version of you, but also be a wife and a partner in whatever capacity whatever that means to you. What is all of this costing you? Put your time, happiness, and energy. I want you to put a dollar amount on it, and I want you to write it down. And you may need to pause to really think about it. But I'm going to tell you this. If it's anything less than $1 million, you're not being real with yourself about what it's really costing you. And that doesn't surprise me, because again, being disconnected from your emotions, shoving them down, being disconnected from your true desires, all those things, they haven't had much importance because you've been just having to go do and be. And so it's hard to put a value on them, but I want you to do it, because these things that seem intangible, these things that you think you are functioning without, have always been there and have always been influencing and affecting your choices, your decisions, everything. You just been playing like you don't see that elephant in the room, and you may not have even been aware of it, but it has been, okay? So I want you to put a dollar amount on it and pause if you need to, okay? So keep that in mind. Really think about that. This is important, okay? Because again, like I said, we're talking about emotions. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about your connecting with your husband on a deep, intimate level. So we have to put it in language that you can understand and make sense. Because now you might say, yeah, okay, I don't want to argue with him. Or okay, yeah, I don't want to feel uneasy. Yeah, I don't want to feel anxious. But now when you see, hold up, this is costing me money, which is probably a language that's a little easier for you to understand. Now it makes more, now you're like, okay, now I can see how this is playing out. And now maybe you can feel motivated to really start making yourself a priority, okay? And not a priority in the sense of, again, that independence of going and doing and being. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about making your thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires a priority, because that connection within yourself is what's required in order for you to come together with your husband. It is not your being independent, driven, making it happen that is the issue in your marriage. That is what you think it is. Your husband might even say that in an argument. It's not that. It's what's going on underneath and behind it, which is the lack of emotion, the lack of emotional connection, and you having a lack of consideration for how you may be affecting him emotionally or other people, okay? Because if you're disconnected emotionally from yourself, you're probably not putting a whole lot of thought into how what you're saying and doing is affecting others emotionally, not deliberately or intentionally. You're not going out there just hurting people. No, that's not you at all. But in our intimate, close relationships, that's sometimes we really get that mirror held up to our face about how we're really being. And so that's why I want you to really think about this and put that dollar amount on it, okay? So now that we've kind of talked about all these different things, how it happened, how you developed this independence, how it really has worked for you, but then also how it has hurt you. Now we're going to talk about how can you take all of that, right? And really learn how to embrace your marriage without fear, because you're not losing your independence. You're not. Listen, congratulate yourself, celebrate yourself. I know on your wedding day, it was a beautiful moment, even though, and I can say this, I know that there are some women who feel like they got married for other reasons, like they felt like they should. Maybe they were checking off a box, or maybe they felt like, oh my goodness, I found a good man, I better go ahead and marry him, But they have over time developed a love and appreciation for their husband, but still maybe not to the degree or the depth that they feel like they want to or should. And that's for all the reasons that we've discussed, okay? And so there is no conflict between your independence and you showing up as a powerful co-creator with your husband. There is no conflict. It just feels like there is, okay? So what do you think your married life would be like if you stopped feeling like your independence as a woman and being a wife were in conflict? What if that just stopped? Go ahead and pause and ponder over that. What would that look like? What would your day-to-day life look like? What would that feel like? Can you even imagine it? Are you like, okay, I'll just wait for the pause and move on? Stop and think about it. Pause. Think about it, really think about it. Because that's the point of all this, right? That's the point of you watching this training, is you want to understand how to jive all this stuff together and be the strong, independent woman you are, that is the savvy business owner, the successful coach, entrepreneur, etc. And also a happily married woman who's a great wife and an excellent support and partner to her husband. How do you jive that? That's the whole reason why you're watching this. So I want you to really think about this question, okay? How would you feel if you could vulnerably communicate your feelings to your husband without feeling weak and needy? Oh my goodness, what? Emotions not being weak or needy? Really take a minute and let that sink in. Even if you can't wrap your mind around it, I really want you to think about it. So now let's talk about what you must do, okay? The first step, and I'm going to say this already, I know that you're already into personal development. I know that you have already done and been doing your work. Absolutely, you have. But as you know, we're like onions, and each new layer, we've got to just continue working on ourselves. And now that you're married, this is a whole new milestone for you. This is a whole new situation, right? And not just married, but you're actually married to a good man who loves you, who's trying, who's making an effort, who's adjustable, that you want this relationship to succeed. And you actually recognize that this time it's not him, it's you that's bringing the drama to the relationship, okay? So what you must do first and foremost is you have to do deep inner child healing. And that could mean more, in addition to what you've already done, or if you've never done any, yes. And the reason is we want to identify, acknowledge, and release the hurt and trauma related to how you view yourself, men, and relationships, okay? Because as you unravel all of this and get to the bottom of where this independence comes from, where the bottom is of why you disconnected from yourself emotionally, what that's about, once you get there to the bottom, then you're able to reconnect, come back together within yourself and start treating yourself and your emotions with love and compassion. I guarantee you, when you saw the title for this training, you probably did not think this is the direction that we would be going in, but this is the direction that we need to be in, because this is the direction that's going to solve your problem, okay? So reconnecting within yourself, treating yourself, your own emotions with love and compassion, that's step one, okay? Because then when you're connected to yourself, now you can connect to your husband on that intimate level emotionally. Now you can stop showing up as a businesswoman in a romantic relationship, okay? The next thing you must do is you have to crush or eliminate your unhealthy relationship constructs. Again, by identifying and reprogramming your limiting beliefs around womanhood. By that, I mean, do you have that strong woman mentality or what it means to be a strong woman? I don't need no man, and men are this and that. Do you have those types of negative programs running around in your head? Did you get that messaging when you were a little girl? Also, your limiting beliefs around love. What does that mean? What does love look like? How is that defined? What did you see when you were growing up? Okay. And marriage. What are the beliefs that you have about that? The limiting beliefs that you have around that particular construct. What does it mean? And why is it a negative tinge to it? What's that about? That's the stuff we have to get to the bottom of, okay? Or you have to get to the bottom of and reprogram it. Because listen, a computer will never do anything differently than what it's programmed to do. And so if you look at your limiting beliefs, which I know you already know what they are, if you look at limiting beliefs as your programs, just know and understand that until you delete and rewrite new programs, you are going to continue to show up in your marriage with all of these things going on. And if your husband is a good man who's treating you well and your belief system is that men are liars or cheaters or can't be trusted or all these things, he doesn't fit the bill. And so what's going to happen is you're going to start to in your mind's relentless efforts to prove you right, you're going to start to unknowingly sabotage the relationship. Okay? Because your mind wants to prove you right. And so that's why it's so important that these be uncovered and identified and rewritten so that you're able to now have a new set of beliefs about what's possible and allowable for you when it comes to who you are as a woman, when it comes to love, relationships, marriage, okay? Last thing that you must do is you must get crystal clear on who you are as a woman and how to be a co-creator alongside your husband of the happy, healthy relation that you both desire, okay? And then give yourself permission to receive it, okay? Remember I talked about you're probably a bad receiver. You're not the greatest person that you are the consummate overgiver. You'll give all the day long and show up for everybody, blah, blah, blah. But when the tables are turned and the love and gifts are flowing, even money are flowing in your direction, sometimes like, hold up now. I don't need that. It kind of makes you feel like, it just doesn't make you feel good when you receive. And that's a challenge. And that's a problem. And so that's why I say, giving yourself permission to receive that good love that your husband is trying to give you, permission to exist in a relationship that's healthy and that nourishes you and that supports you. And like I said, being a co-creator in building this life that you want to have together with your husband. But first, like I said, you have to get crystal clear on who you are, because until you know that, who you are, then you're not going to know what it is that you desire, because what you desire is based on who you are, not other people's expectations, not check boxes. It's based on you. And because you've been going and doing and being, you've never had the time or opportunity or even maybe thought to stop and really think about who you are on that deep emotional level, reconnecting with her, figuring out her needs, desires, dreams, and then giving her permission to have them alongside a wonderful man that wants to support you, that's loving you, and is there for you, cheering for you, rooting for you.